The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good, everybody? You know who I am, man. I'm GG. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers, man. Before I get things started, man, I want to give a shout out to all the haters out there, man. How y'all doing, man? Hope y'all passing a good day. And if you haven't already, man, hit the like button, man. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification button so you can stay abreast of what's cracking here on the Green Gorilla channel. Shout out to all the people who decided to join me today on this Saturday. Appreciate that. Shout out to Barry Little, man. Before I even get things started, shout out to Barry Little, man. Thank you for the donations. He says, if I have fought the good fight, no, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. Keep the faith. Timothy 4:7. Rest in eternal power and glory. Kevin, amen. So anyway, man, before I get things started, I want to give a shout out to all the members of the Green Gorilla channel, man. Big up to Show Me, Ricky Dawson, Rais Muajid, Michael Ross, Alan Wiley, The Face, Lee Ways, Mantis on Break, Electrician 480, and Lord Hamal. Big up. Big up to Life of Commerce, Apex Prowler, Julius Ferguson, True 7360, Jay Cleveland Green, Jay Bino, The Advocate, Herbert Lewis, D. Scott, Marvin Evans, Lotus Eater, and Rogue's Son. Big up. Big up to Brotherly Love 215, L. Fry, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Mark Holt, Pete Rock 496, John J., The IDP Expressions, Afro Troop TV, and Adam. Big up. Big up to Tahuti's, BGS Ibmore, Ignatz Mouse, Brian Peace, Papa Didas, Scott Haywood, Black Uru Strikes, Dr. Tree 33, Leroy Honeycutt, Broken Blade, and Super Tech. Big up. Big up to 77 Bass X, Brian McMurray, K-Ron S, Anthony Davis, Artisan MC, Damon Brown, Donnell 360, Seven Coast Dojo, Pulpit 28, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, and Sandra Jean 955. Big up. Big up to Charles Gilmore 3, Patricia Colley, Greg, Barry Little, Mr. Valentino, Jason Hales, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Cameron 87, Doc LaRock, J. Charles, Mark Swift, and Odd Collard. Big up. Big up to Donnell Watts, hiphop.catv, Coach DC, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, Barnolas, I'm Just Jules, TD Hip Hop Media, Drew Main, Mr. He Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, Aaron Infinite, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Kalanja Kala, Hostile ADEP, and W. Pierre 1. And I can't forget my brothers in heaven, W. Pierre 1 and Kevin Samuels, man. Big up to y'all, man. And on the Patreon side, I want to give a shout out to Adrian Hicks, Anu219, Asangwa, Darnell Smith, Dragon59, I'm the Light of My Father, Jason Warren, Jay Bailey, Lamont Latimer, Mr. Michi, Preserve Prisoner, Rufus Winfield, Taz, Waffle Weave, William Joyner, and Excalibur. Big up to y'all, man. You deserve a round of applause. Thank you so much for supporting the Green Gorilla channel. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. So I'm going to cut to the chase, man. I'm not going to do anything more, man. All the bells and whistles about to come to a close. Get on to the main subject at hand, man. Want to give a shout out to the brother Kevin Samuels, man. He recently passed. But you know, I always say, man, you got to live your life to the fullest because you never know when God going to pull it. In the blink of an eye, faster than the speeding bullet, man. You never know. So big up to the brother Kevin Samuels, man. And, you know, I got a couple of guests here with me, man. I got my brother, Dr. Tiasan Johnson and Dr. Ronald Neal, man. Big up to y'all, man. How y'all doing this afternoon, man? How y'all doing?
Good. Good. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up with y'all, man?
Chilling, man.
Hey.
Chilling, man. Chilling, man. I know both of you all have already done shows about the brother Kevin Samuels, man, and his unexpected passing.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just wanted to do a show, and I wanted to, you know, have you say a few things, if you could, about Kevin Samuels in your estimation. I mean, you know, what was the value of Kevin Samuels in relation to black male agency, as you would say, Dr. Neal, black male independence, as you would say, Dr. Neal, and Dr. Tiasan Johnson, as you would say, black masculinism in general? Because there are a lot of people who are saying a lot of things about Kevin Samuels after his passing, and nobody expected this. Okay. So I want you to say a few things, if you could, about, your estimation of that brother and his value to masculinism, black male agency, and black male independence.
Yeah, I would say, man, I would begin with the fact that we first were introduced to him as an image consultant, and he was very, very invested in the whole idea of image, and he was really obsessed with the black male image, and he personified what he regarded as being a very healthy image of black masculinity, and one that, and I said this in my most recent upload, which was a repost from an earlier time, and but I still hold on to the sentiments there, that Kevin Samuels, in terms of social media and where we are with globalization and everything in its popularity, he was presenting an alternative, a kind of masculinity, vision with respect to black men. And I will say this again. We have been, this country, and we have been fed the kind of the lowest type of um, viewpoint, image, myth, when it comes down to how we understand who black men are, and the like, athletes, entertainers, street dudes, and everything. And I say this not to deride, entertainment, athletics, and everything like that, but there are so many other aspects of black masculinity that don't get any real representation, you know. And we've been talking about this here, even the guys, the working class guys, the blue collar guys, the guys who are electricians, plumbers and carpenters, HVAC people. I grew up around a lot of working class black men, who had jobs and who had families, married 30, 40, 50 years. You know what I'm saying? They sent their kids to college, folks from the silent generation. I've known doctors, I've known lawyers, engineers, and what have you. And so the point is that Kevin's popularity, his rise, brought those elements back into the limelight, and he sought to really repopularize that. And so that is what I saw his major contribution in terms of black men and how we're presented in the world. So it's really, from that image standpoint, there's a lot to be said about ideology and how we understand our place in relationship to feminism in American society. But just from an image standpoint, because he was an image guy, and you can only take image so far, but because he was an image guy, he did mean a lot. And I have to say this: image does matter. It does matter. It has limits, but it does matter.
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson, you want to say a few words real quick?
Well, my thing is that when we look at black men in regard to relationships, in regard to family, in regard to those matters, there's been a social expectation, in my assessment, that we remain silent. Most particularly from the 1970s and 80s onward. It was okay if we talked about matters of injustice as it related to the community as a whole. It was okay as long as we dealt with matters of employment, politics to some extent. But at the end of the day, we weren't allowed to speak on relationships. We weren't allowed to speak on the family, the state of the family. We were told to sit down and be quiet. We were told what our role has been, what's wrong with it, what needed to happen. So when you get to a Kevin Samuels, he marks a moment where black men have decided to become vocal on a level that I'm almost 50. I've never seen in my lifetime. He comes out of a movement. He comes out of a period where, there are numerous black men beginning to do this, but clearly he broke through and had the ear of multiple communities, and most particularly our own. to the point where he could not be denied, he could not be unheard. And he began to say things that, frustrated people, that, that broke outside of the accepted framework for what we were supposed to be able to say, which is virtually nothing. And he was unapologetic about it. And I think in many ways that unapologetic nature was something that shocked most of us, or many of us, I would say. Being that outspoken, I think in many ways he taught women what unfettered black male speech sounds like. Because I think many have been able to live in a bubble where they haven't been exposed to that in their households and their families growing up, so on and so forth. And he reminded men what unfettered speech looks like, not just unfettered in the barbershop amongst other men, but unfettered in front of a camera, unfettered in front of a microphone, and unfettered in front of a group of people standing in the same room that may vary in their identities or whatnot. Unapologetic, truthful speech that put on the table with dignity the things that men feel. And I think that the importance of what Kevin did in that respect is invaluable. He was a reminder, most particularly to black men, that you should be able to speak in such fashion, whatever it is you hold true. And the fact that you've been taught to be silent and sit quietly on your hands is something we need to break from. So I credit the brother with doing that, with an unchecked head. I mean, he didn't bow in that respect. And I think the reminder is much needed and timely.
Yeah, so I agree with both of you all. My viewpoint of Kevin Samuels is, here's a brother from this space that we call the Black Manosphere, on YouTube, a young man doing content creation who started off small, but rose through the ranks to become a YouTube star. And, people say that it was largely based off of being disrespectful and misogynistic. But I think it was based largely off him being frank, open, and honest and telling the truth about what he considered to be the reality in relation to relationships today. And especially, just pointing out some of the delusions related to what women desire or what they expect from a partner or a husband or a relationship in general to what they really can actually attain or achieve given what they look like and given, their attitude and their disposition. I mean, you got to think. So here you got a group of women who, many of whom are average looking, many of whom are, over 35, many of whom, let's face it, they're not like the crop of the crop. They're not like Instagram hotties, okay? But these women still desire to have the highest of the high earning men. And I think that Kevin just told them, look, if you want that kind of man, here's what you have to look like. Here's what you're going to expect or have to expect in an interaction with a man like this. And he's going to have options. So you're not going to be the only person that he's going to be looking at. I mean, like, we already know this when it comes to athletes and entertainers. We already expect them to be able to date who they want and to have multiple kind of affairs and sexual relationships and so on and so forth. But I mean, I just don't see what was so really shocking about the kind of things he was saying. I mean, it just seems like it's reality to me.
Yeah. And it seemed to me, I mean, everything, it seemed to me, I mean, these are unspoken assumptions, right? Prior to Kevin Samuels, okay? All you have to do is look around the world. And I think that I think women and men have understood this for eons. The thing that made Kevin stand out and others is that you verbalize it, okay? You verbalize it that the man who has the most money and the most status, he has the pick of the litter. I mean, there's nothing, new or radical about that. That's been happening since forever. You understand what I'm saying? The only problem is that the problem comes when someone actually verbalizes it, gives it perspective, and it presents this to someone, a woman who feels that she's entitled to this type of figure. And he said, no, this is not how the world works.
Mhm.
you know and so, the whole idea of him being misogynist, I mean, we're at a place right now. I mean, misogyny is a lazy term. It's a lazy term, because the way it's used, it is simply used in a way, to just to belittle or delegitimize any type of difference of perspective that a man might have with a woman or the female population. Anything, trivial or non-trivial. It's almost lost its meaning. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the United States. I think the term might have some real salience when it comes down to Saudi Arabia. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Mhm.
Or when we hear about the stories about the IG models who are traveling, to cavort with these rich, oil barons, and they're being excuse me, they're being defecated on for money. Okay, and they're engaging in all sorts of, degenerating, degenerate acts. You know what I mean? And so, for someone else's sexual pleasure, but in this context, it almost means anything. Anytime a man just says anything that's unappealing to a woman.
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. It's and that's this kind of silence that's been imposed on the basis of what's become politically correct. And I agree with Dr. Neal that this being these categories for canceling people really have no meaning. They're just useful as tools for people to eliminate speech that they don't like. It's a useful category. It's used to attack mostly men, for the most part, in regard to controlling the discourse on acceptable behavior and so on and so forth. And for the most part, men haven't had, especially black men, we really haven't had a major platform to operate from or to respond. I mean, if you go back to the 1980s and 90s, the platform we most had access to was hip hop, was music as an avenue to respond, but it meant that we had to rely on whoever had access to those platforms, whoever had an album coming out. You had to kind of hope that they would represent you. And now we're in a zone where through social media, everyday brothers can pick up their phones and contribute, their computers, of course, and contribute what they want. And so it's a different era. And we're finally able to say the things that, in one sense, you could say is common sense, but hell, after a couple generations, there's a lot of young brothers that and sisters that come into my class, and common sense, as we'd call it, they've been somewhat removed from, because this silencing has been going on for so long.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Neil.
I just want to say this before things get too somber, man. And rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. But the beauty of his work is that it's in the world. It can't be taken away. What has been done cannot be undone. The voice that has been unleashed, this type of uncensored black male voice, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You know what I'm
Nope.
saying?
Nope.
And this is the beautiful thing. I mean, you've got 2 years, and I've been thinking about this. And again, I'm saying this because I know that we're about to, get into some hard areas in a minute. But you've got 2 years, thousands of hours of content, that is going to be around forever. That has to be analyzed, that has to be studied, written about, so on and so forth. We're gonna do what we're gonna do as scholars. When it comes down to this type of stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is that, what has been done cannot be undone. As Dr. J said, the voice in the 21st century, in 2022, the voice of the unapologetic black man is in the world. And that is a voice to be reckoned with.
Yeah, but not everyone agrees with that statement. And so what I want to do is to look at an article really quickly and to demonstrate what some people out there think about Kevin Samuels in terms of a phenomena, in terms of a personality, in terms of a human being, and people's reaction to his death. Okay, so I have an article that was published by News One, and we already know that's the bougie Negroes trying to imitate white media. Uh, that's how I perceive it anyway. Negroes dressing up in suits, and not that I have any problem with that, but the whole point is to kind of mock and imitate, MSNBC or Fox News or one of the other respectable news outlets, and to do that with black folks. But anyway, the article is written by somebody named Zach Lindley, and I'm going to put that up on the screen. And then I'm going to make myself bigger before I do that. Hold on. Let me make sure I make myself bigger so people can actually see this. Okay, so the article says, "Stop the cap. We all know why Kevin Samuels' death is making black women feel a way. Feel some sort of way, some type of way." And he says the internet is split between people, especially black women, who are celebrating his death due to his constant misogynoir, and people who are appalled at the celebration. Now,
that's a discontinuous split right there. That's not the split. That's not the damn split. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I mean, first of all, I mean, we'll see. So let's just see what this guy says, okay? So let me close this, man. You know how they got pop-ups on the internet. Anyway, he says, "When Rush Limbaugh died, I rejoiced and made a lot of crude jokes because I am a black man and Rush was a racist. Actually was an all-around sexist and bigot. All manner of marginalized people were electric sliding on top of that man's grave." Now, I mean, personally, when Rush Limbaugh died, I didn't pay it any mind. I just kept pushing and going about my day. I didn't start, dancing and, doing the WAP and, as if I were happy because this man died. The only thing I could think of was like, okay, well, he's dead. Wow. I didn't necessarily agree with most of what Rush Limbaugh says, but I was raised to be respectful of the dead. You know what I'm saying? And I, I am critical of some people, their ideas especially, but rejoicing over someone's death is not something that I partake in. It's just not something I do. I like to consider myself as someone who was raised better than that. That's just me. So, this New Jack, these New Jack attitudes are they're ridiculous to me, man. I can't really jive with it,
My response is, "Oh, Rush is dead." Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Nixon died. I remember when I remember when Ronald Reagan died.
You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I didn't, and I wasn't a fan of neither of these guys.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I know KRS said he was glad when Nixon died. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't feel that kind of way. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't, what they're doing with Kevin Samuels at this moment. I mean, it's immature. It shows. I'm going to say this, man. It just shows the kind of de-evolution that has taken place amongst us. You know what I mean? This is childish. This is kiddie. This is kiddie-like. You have people and they're writing for these organizations. This is, tabloid-esque. This is gossip-esque. And it doesn't reflect well on the caliber of people who are supposed to be, communicating information about things that are happening in the world. It doesn't say a whole lot about, the blacks who are in journalism and communications and everything like that. It really reflects poorly on them. And we've seen this. We've seen this for more than a decade with the Root. The Root. When Henry Louis Gates was a part of when he helped found the Root, and they was just pouring all type of venom. It 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 was a betrayal of black journalism, real serious black journalism. And we haven't gotten out of that rut. And the younger folks who are coming along are just, extending all of the, kiddie stuff that they've been doing.
But let's also be look, my issue already with the framing of this. First of all, I don't dig the comparison with Rush Limbaugh. That's some bullshit. But second of all, this whole framework of one group who's now free of a certain type of misogyny and another group who are shocked and appalled. No, you're not talking about a group that's shocked and appalled. You're talking about a group that stand with a lot of what Kevin had to say, especially brothers that he spoke for who've been silenced for decades. And so in his passing, not only do we respect the brother's contribution, but we adamantly disagree with how he's being mischaracterized, how he's being slandered, and we do take issue with the celebration of his death because, as I said in a piece I wrote the other day in response to this, it's not really about Kevin in terms of what a lot of these people are doing. They're using Kevin to malign black men. And I told brothers, there's going to come a point, if you sit in these discussions, it's going to come pretty quick, where they're going to go so far into their misandry, it's going to have no connection to Kevin. That's when you'll see this doesn't have to do with Kevin. This has to do with an opportunity to cuss out and malign black men at the expense of Kevin's memory. And that's what we're really dealing with. So his characterization of the two sides is already problematic.
Well, I mean, but let's go on. I'm going to state my opinion in a quick minute. But he says when Don Imus died, because he died as well, he was the guy who made the comment about the Rutgers basketball team, which was predominantly black, and he called the girls, nappy-headed hoes. That's what he did. Okay. I didn't really support the comment, especially coming from some old ass white guy, but when I teach courses and I talk about free speech and I talk about comedy and I talk about shock jocks, we talk about the issue of freedom of speech in America. What kind of speech is acceptable? What kind of speech is unacceptable? What triggers, the moniker of hate speech, and what kind of speech is actually dangerous and causes harm, irreparable harm to persons, right? And we always juxtapose that with the right versus the good, all right, which is brainy or whatever the case may be. It is what it is. But I always point to comedians who use similar terminology, rappers who use similar terminology. Not to say that I'm basically accepting what Don Imus said or what Rush Limbaugh said. Okay, but at the end of the day, it's a free country. You can say what you want to say, and there's an audience for it. And unfortunately, my viewpoint on it is you have to have counter arguments for the kind of speech that they're utilizing. The goal shouldn't be to try to cancel people, as far as I'm concerned, because you're not going to cancel the ideals that they have. You're not going to cancel the sentiments they have by trying to silence them by means of boycotting or appealing to corporations. That doesn't work. Okay. So, but anyway, he goes on to say, this author, the point of all that, respect for dead shit goes out the window when terrible people kick the bucket, especially in the digital age. So, no respect for the
people he's comparing them to are racist old white men, which is bullshit in the first place. But go ahead. Yeah,
so it's like they're comparing him to Archie Bunker, that sort of stereotype. He's a regressive man. So I'm going to read on. So he says, now Kevin Samuels is confirmed dead. Now I'm putting the misogynoir guru on the same level. No, he says, I'm not putting the misogynoir guru on the same level as Imus and Limbaugh, which he is. Yes. I mean, he is. Like, why even bring up the comparison if you're not bringing up the comparison? Like, you're trying to create, some sort of category, and you're lumping Samuels into the category. Basically, you're saying misogynoir, first of all, is as appalling as racism, which, quite frankly, I don't consider what Kevin Samuels was doing was misogynoir. I personally don't. Because I've seen, you know, some guys go in on women in this space, and Kevin Samuels wasn't at all at that extreme of the you know, the polls. Okay, he just wasn't. All right, he ain't even as bad as I am.
Let me say
I'm
this,
just
man. Yeah, this is hyperbole, man. This is all hyperbole.
Yeah.
This is all exaggeration. Here's the thing about feminism. Feminism. I mean, and they're masters at this, right? I mean, they take the most. They could take the most mundane thing, right, and they can inflate it, and they can just take it to its extreme. You know what I'm saying? So it's like if they're not calling him, if they're not, I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised that they haven't associated him with the Taliban or some terrorist organization. You know what I'm saying? I'm surprised. Now I wouldn't be surprised in the next 1 to 2 to 3 weeks that they begin, going in that direction, because that's kind of what they do. You know what I mean? They overinflate things. I mean, Rush Limbaugh. I mean, do you know how long Rush Limbaugh thrived on radio and then the internet? Do you know how connected he was to the right and the the moral majority and all those other people and stuff like that? You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And the thing about it is that I would defend his right to free speech. You know what I'm saying? And I had no problem with Don Imus. When Don Imus said what he said, I didn't think he deserved to be canceled. And what's so interesting about it, that even a black male feminist, Michael Awkward, wrote an entire book titled Burying Don Imus. A black feminist came to Don Imus's defense, I'm sorry, over that whole scenario, saying that it was ridiculous how far that we went with trying to censor him. And I think we're in dangerous territory, especially as black people, man, because when you think about the history of censorship in terms of us, before civil rights and all that kind of stuff, I mean, if we said anything, remotely close to offending white people, that'd have us hanging from a tree. You know what I
Right.
mean?
But
And so we are the new, I'm going to say we as a collective, but these so-called liberals and feminists, they are illiberal. They are the new illiberals, and they're dangerous. This illiberalism is dangerous. And we have to speak out against it, and we have to condemn it. This anti-intellectualism that's coming out of feminism and LGBTQ stuff, and the liberals is anti-intellectual, it's ignorant, and it has to be challenged.
But you know what? I think we also have to call this out too. And I said this yesterday during my stream. This is a lot of virtue signaling right now, and I'm noticing there are a number of black men on YouTube and social media in general who are virtue signaling to black women how much better and different they are from Kevin Samuels, and how aghast they are at his brazenness and his rudeness. And of course they love to throw around the word misogyny and so on and so forth. Not getting into the minutia, the examples that contradict those kind of glib assessments. They don't get into any of that. It's just comfortable to get up and distance themselves, slander him, to do so, to get a pat on the head, maybe some career advancement, right? Maybe a placement of a publication, maybe a promotion in the academic space. Because the reality of it is, even on YouTube, catering to black women's egos is a doorway to advance yourself. And so that was one of the first things I started to notice. The hour that his death hit social media, not that it was confirmed, the hour it hit social media with no confirmation, I started to see men who were posting videos distancing themselves from him, critiquing Kevin and how negative he was, and in turn highlighting their own value to black women.
The other thing that strikes me is that everybody is someone who just pays attention. Well, a lot of people just pay attention to Kevin Samuels after he blew up. They didn't see Kevin Samuels grind at the outset, where he would give it to men just as as harshly as he gave it to women. But the whole point is, though, that you can't be harsh with women. You gotta put the gloves on.
Right.
You can't talk to them candidly and frankly.
Right.
You have to preserve their feelings. And one of the things, Kevin always used to make a reference to, or persons he used to make a reference to, was Simon Cowell.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look, no one would be saying, what, they're saying to me to Simon Cowell. I mean, people have their opinions about Simon Cowell in relation to, the American Idol or whatnot. But if they can't sing, they can't sing. Like, and of course, if you don't look a certain way, look, lady, you're not a knockout, okay? You're not a Beyonce or a Kelly Rowland, okay? You're not going to get the next guy in the NBA draft to throw a ring at you. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get a guy who's making 250 G's a year throwing himself at you like you're the hottest car on the lot. And, he blew up off of one comment. You're average at best.
Mm-hmm.
That's what blew him up, right? When he told the young lady, you're average at best. And she was. And she was.
He wasn't lying.
She was average at best.
But then he always goes back to clarify what exactly is average. He said the majority of people are average. And he would often ask, why is it an insult to point out what's obviously true for the majority of people? That's at the end of if you're going to have a high standard, like, high level beauty or a lot of money, those things are going to be in the minority. We tend to value that which is in the minority. The majority is where we consider average. So we interpret average to mean a diss. But Kevin would always clarify.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, this society has fed Black women so much exceptionalism over the decades. So much the Black female exceptionalism. You know what I mean? The Black woman as a model minority. The Black woman as just, the personification of the American dream or what have you. And that thing has really embedded itself in the minds of, I would say, the bulk of the Black female population. And so when you tell somebody, that they're average, who's been, indoctrinated with this exceptionalistic ideology, that's a major affront.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To their worldview. And I think, and that's the big thing, is that, and I think, and white society has really has really contributed to this, because white society has cultivated this exceptionalistic view of Black women, and they benefit from it. It benefits from, and I've said this on my page and other places. I think, and I won't be surprised if it happen in the near future, is that you're going to see that disappear. That exceptionalism that they are so invested in, that white people have helped to underwrite. And they're gonna, you want to talk about being treated like average is best?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just wait to see what happens within the next, 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
And I think that's going to follow because look, every time you have a movement, there's going to be a counter movement. Every time you have, a thesis, you're going to have an antithesis. Okay. In politics, there's going to be an ebb and flow, like a pendulum swinging back and forth. Mm-hmm. So we've gone far, far to the left now. So we're in woke cancel culture. It's like fourth wave feminism, which I consider to be cancel culture. That's what I think it is. It's like, I'm gonna cry and whine about how hurt I am, and about how irritated I am, and get people to pay attention to it, and to harm other people because they don't share my opinion or my viewpoint. Okay, and so I just don't think it's gonna stand, and they're attacking things that people thought were inviolable. Like, this Roe v. Wade thing. Like, people thought that was, going to be something that stood the test of time. I don't know why. Look, when the right decides to go right, and if they have the leverage to pull it off, they're going to remove whatever people consider to be the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, be ready, be prepared. That's all I'm trying to tell people. Be prepared. And black women are going to be under that rubric as well. Okay? All of the handouts, all of the exceptionalism, that's something that the left gave them. That's something the academy gave them. That's something that, black feminism, wedded to white feminism gave them. Okay? But I mean, come on, man. Like, without even going that far.
And I'm gonna say this, man. And white people see the stuff that we see, right? And on both sides of the political spectrum, they don't say anything about it.
Mm.
They're silent. What we call BFF. They're silent about it.
Right.
Okay? To the extent that they can benefit from using black women in whatever ways that they do. Okay. But I'm saying is that silence is going to disappear as things begin to change. And someone talked about, white guilt disappearing. Yeah, that's true.
I don't think they've ever been guilty. I mean, or felt guilt. I mean, there's a few of them. Yeah, but I mean, that's virtue signaling. The whole white guilt thing is a virtue signal. Because if they really felt guilty, they would actually do what was required or what was requisite in order to have some sort of substantive change. But as it stands, all they have to do is virtue signal, and do what works to their benefit, and then they can claim that they're somehow responsible for arcing America towards justice. I just don't think that that's ever been like on their agenda, to right the racial injustices in this nation. I mean, they're just looking out for themselves. And part of the way that they do that is attached, to careerism, especially in the academy. Just say the right things, appear to be on the right side of diversity and inclusion, and then all of a sudden, you can bypass scrutiny. You can be seen as one of the in crowd, one of the cool kids, so to speak.
It's performative. It's a performative justice orientation, and they're more concerned with maintaining the idea of that than the reality of changing it. That's really what that comes down to. And I think there's a particular political approach that many black women have gotten comfortable with, where they're investing in, trying to find new ways to exploit that sensibility amongst white liberals, but not necessarily for the advancement of the community, for the advancement of black women. I think that's one of the dynamics that I've been trying to say recently. We have to take into account. We have to acknowledge that it is a different day. The idea of blackness as we understood it from the 60s and the 70s has shifted among many black women, particularly professional feminists, where blackness is synonymous with their advancement, not the advancement of the community as a whole, and especially black boys and men. Very different reality.
So look, let me go on, because this thing ain't really long, and I want to look at some of these responses, or some of the to Kevin Samuels' death, which I consider to be morbid, to be quite honest. But anyway, he says, I'm not trying to put Kevin Samuels on the same level as Imus and Limbaugh. I'm just saying, if you were to at least take the time to look at this man through the eyes of black women, which I guarantee you most of the people who follow Kevin were black women. I guarantee you, bro. But anyway, you might not think the comparison is that far off. Samuels dedicated his entire platform to his weird obsession with humbling women, particularly black women. His whole shtick was based around tying the very value of women exclusively to their desirability to men. Now, I just think that that's inaccurate. Did he humble them? I think so, by telling them the truth. But in terms of basically tying the value of women exclusively to their desirability to men, that's not what Kevin Samuels was doing. I'm going to tell you what Kevin Samuels was doing. Kevin Samuels says, what do you want? I mean, he asks basic questions all the time. I don't know him verbatim because I'm not Kevin Samuels, but I've watched the show a few times. And I mean, basically, do you want to be married? Yes. Do you want to have kids? Yes. Do you want a man, making X, Y, or Z? Yes. Okay. Well, let's start off. Let me tell you what the men in these kinds of positions, what they're desirous of.
Well, you know what? He'd ask them first, do you know what those men want? And that's when you usually hit a chasm of silence, because they spent so much time telling men what they wanted, but they never bothered to think about what the men they want. And he would let the silence sit for a minute to drive home the point.
And look, let's just be honest, man. You're a black man. I'm a black man. Okay, we know what it's like to be in the white collar world, and we know what other black men in the white collar world act like, what they think like, and what they talk like, even if they don't say half of the stuff that they think in front of an audience. Let's just be frank, man. I mean, a guy making $200K, you know, his first choice is not going to be, okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna look for me an average chick, man, that's got 3 or 4 kids, man, by about 2 or 3 dudes.
I want her to be bigger and heavier than I am.
Yeah. And think about a guy like that. Think about the circles he's in. I mean, you making that kind of money, you're in rarefied air. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, you have a circle of women that are very competitive. So, I mean, you choose what you choose.
So then he goes on to say, he told successful black women that if they weren't married, they were in fact not, they were not in fact successful. Well, they weren't successful to the extent to which they desired to be married, but couldn't marry the kind of men that they wanted. They weren't successful in that particular, domain.
To their own values, yes.
So he told single women who had standards that their standards needed to be lowered lest they be doomed to a life of loneliness and low value. And, you know, I guess this is a reference to the whole concept that, look, you ain't getting no younger. Like, first of all, he would often ask them, like, were you married or engaged before? He would often ask that question, right? Or are you in a relationship now? And many of them would say yes. Well, why aren't you marrying the person that you're with? Well, he's kind of like not the kind of guy that I want. He's not like high value enough, you know, or he's not like ambitious enough. He's not quite like what I want. Mm-hmm. So many of these women are perceiving the men that they're with as people that they don't value. Mm-hmm. But yet and still, in their attempt to want to have like something better, you know, that's just totally acceptable, right? Or they might even have had children. He would often tell them, look, how much money did your ex make? Well, $50K, $60K, you know, whatever the case may be. But that wasn't good enough. Kevin, I didn't think that was like, I thought he could do better. And then, you know, it always went back to the whole concept of, well, how many guys do you think exist at the top of the food chain? And, you know, like, how much do you think the average guy out here is making? Like, you're an average woman yourself. Why do you feel like you're going to get one of these guys? Why not go back to your ex? Why not work it out with the person you got kids with? Because the next guy don't want to come. The next guy's not going to want to have to deal with all of that baggage that you got. But
that's misogynistic, though.
That's misogyny.
And what's so interesting? Kevin is merely responding to what they're saying. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about this. I mean, here we are, 2022. I mean, you got so many books and blogs and TV shows that talk about what women want and all that kind of stuff. So when Kevin talks about when he talked about the modern woman, he's simply zooming in on everything that they've said.
Exactly.
Okay. And their desires. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like, and I thought like Donovan Sharp. Y'all watch Donovan Sharp sometime. You know the thing about Donovan Sharp? Donovan Sharp reads a lot of female literature, female blogs, and female content. When you watch Donovan Sharp, he's always responding to what women say they want in the dating game and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. No, it's no different. It's no different from what, you know, Kevin has done and what so many other people have done. You're simply responding to what women have already said. You're not creating stuff.
Exactly.
And this is misogynistic because you're responding to it. She says that she doesn't want to settle. She says that she deserves this kind of man, this kind of lifestyle, and all these men are so inadequate and what have you. You know what I mean?
Beneath her. Yeah.
Beneath her.
And that's the biggest draw of all of this to me. So at the end of the day, here you got a guy like telling women, like, look, be realistic. You're not gonna get a guy who's a top tier guy. It's only so many of those guys to go around anyway. And what's gonna draw them into you to make them put a ring on your finger? They got women throwing themselves at them. So what makes you think you're gonna get that, and then you're gonna have a great, like, rosy, nice, bubbly, Cinderella type story work to your benefit? Like, why do you even expect this? This is delusional. I think that was his main, I think at the end of the day, that was his main lesson. Like, your standards are too high. Even women have come in the social media, even women have said this. Like, Olivia Pope or whoever, I don't know.
Rebecca Lynn Pope. Yeah.
Okay, I'm speaking of the woman on whatever that dang on TV show is or whatever. The black woman who was with the white president. Yeah, I don't know, man. But
Scandal.
Yeah, that's it, man. I'm sorry.
Olivia Pope. My bad.
My bad. So and shout out to cousin TAW, man. Cousin TAW.
Cousin T-Taw, yeah.
Cousin T-Taw.
What's up, man?
What's up?
So, and to BGS and to all the other brothers who donated, man, I appreciate y'all, man. I'm looking. I see y'all, and so I post it, as I see it. But their standards are too high. Like, these women expect the higher echelon men. And then, first of all, you have to also take into consideration the condition that black men are in the United States and why. But these women don't even care. They just want what they want. And they don't even look the part. I'm just like, and think about it, man. Like, what are the higher echelon men going to be doing? If you're in demand, you're going to play the field. Like, if you got big money, it's already been shown to be true, man. These guys, a lot of like a Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods, Magic Johnson, all these guys have got big bread. They got women throwing themselves at them constantly.
That's it.
So what makes you think these guys are going to be, faithful? Like, I mean, why would you even expect it?
It's interesting. Let me just say this, man. You mentioned Magic Johnson. I don't know if you guys got HBO. So they've got this new show called Winning Time. Talks about the rise of the LA Lakers and everything. And you got Jerry Buss and Magic Johnson. I mean, it's a great. I love it, man. I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
And it's right there. All this stuff that we're talking about. You talking about Magic. You go back to the 1970s, the early 80s, as the Lakers became this super empire in terms of sports and all this, and women and sex and status and money and all that. Man, come on, man. This stuff has been with us for so long. And these women are so disingenuous by pretending, as though these dynamics are like somehow, new or something.
But that's not even what's offensive. Because to me, look, the only people that are allowed to have affairs and to do are actually women. When you see, and this happens to me all the time, when I post on men who've, egregiously cheated on whatever, there's all kinds of browbeating and criticism. When women do it, I inevitably get a group of women who come up in the chat and say, well, I wonder what she went through. I wonder what he did to her. I wonder what she grew up with. And this even includes when they commit heinous crimes, like killing their own children or their husbands or so on and so forth. The point I'm getting at is it's acceptable for one person in the relationship to have affairs and play the options amongst many black women, and that's women themselves. It's only a problem when men do it. So this whole question of Kevin supporting misogynist positions of men playing their, playing out their potential and being able to exploit the market to their benefit, they don't really have a problem with it as long as it's a woman doing it. They have a problem with Kevin because he pointed out that men of value in any society, depending on what they value, can do it. See, the problem is men using their worth, not women. They're open to that.
And that is, I believe that to be the truth, man. You just, everything is contextualized as it pertains to women. Everything is demonized as it pertains to men. So if a man does something, it can't be that his wife was irksome, demanding, irritable, irascible. It had to be that there was some moral fault of his own. And not to say that there couldn't have been. Look, I've always said this. Virtue is an equal opportunity accomplishment or achievement, man. And both men and women can display it. Both men and women can be morally depraved and exhibit moral depravity. You can be either virtuous or vicious if you're a male or a female. But in this culture, we only highlight the viciousness of men, but we make excuses for, and we create all of these circumstantial scenarios for the viciousness of women. And that's problematic. And look, I'm not saying all women are vicious, but I mean, there are enough of them, to equal the scales in relation to all the hyperbolic claims that are made about men. I mean, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be sexual assault, the rates are damn near comparable. Mm-hmm. But who gets scapegoated and who gets demonized for it? Mm-hmm. It's black men, or men in general. Okay, so but at any rate, and then again, somebody said something about tone, right? I don't know who mentioned that word, or maybe nobody mentioned the word. I think, or maybe I saw it in the chat.
In the chat, yeah, somebody did.
All of this is about Kevin Samuels' tone.
Right.
This is what this is all about. Okay. Now, if Kevin Samuels was gay, which some people accuse him of being anyway, but I mean, but if he was a gay man who, basically was an effeminized man, and he told women the same kind of things, it would probably have been accepted more easily. It would have been, more palatable to women. Okay. But let's just be frank, man. This is Kevin Samuels has been tone police, and black men are being tone police. They're being told what they should and should not say,
right,
and in what way they should and should not say it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, black feminists are advocate promoters of, limiting what they consider to be tone policing in relation to themselves. So if they're angry or they're upset, or if they have a viewpoint that they want to articulate and they want to utilize emotion in order to do it, they feel like there should be no impediment for them, their capacity to do it. But when it comes to others, particularly, men, but heterosexual men, you need to put the gloves on. You can't really actually say what it is you want to say, because then that's disrespectful. That's somehow, going past some sort of line. But then the question is, how can you, if you want to be consistent in your act and your speech, how can you tone police while at the same time critiquing, tone policing in and of itself? That's something that, I just don't get as an intellectual. I don't understand that.
Can I ask the audience a question real quick? Because to me, this whole issue of tone policing is a deflection to keep from having to deal with the concepts being posed, the issues being put on the table by Kevin and those who support Kevin. This tone policing is a deflection. But let me ask the men in the comment section who are listening to this broadcast, how many of you have actually experienced a very harsh tone from the women in your lives? And I don't care if it's grandmothers, mothers, girlfriends, wives, sisters, aunts. How many of you from growing up to manhood were given a harsh tone when they wanted to tell you something? Tell him, you can even put a 1 in the chat if you want to. I just want to know if tone is as much of an issue as I'm hearing it being made as related to Kevin, then surely the experience of men would be that, many of the women in our lives were doing it properly, and somehow Kevin just got it wrong. So we've surely been introduced to the proper tone from the women in our lives, right? If it's such a matter that Kevin needs to be checked by almost anybody that talks about him for tone. But look at all the ones in the chat.
Yeah.
How much has tone been an issue for Black men in regard to the women in their lives?
I mean, how many of y'all have been screamed at?
See that? You see that?
How many, you know, and making her point, you know what I mean, and yelling, and not just tone, but we're talking about anger and just, you know, intense emotions, you know what I mean, to the point where you wonder, okay, is this person going to engage in violence?
Right.
You know, that sort of thing. I mean, and that's very real. You know, and I've had this even with feminists, you know what I mean? And in my exchanges with them, and I'm like, oh, is she gonna get violent? You know, because she's raised her voice and she's gotten very emotional and everything. And you know, I've seen that what I've said is just pushed her buttons, and I'm like, do I need to call the police right now? You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's real.
But you know, but the man, I'm an advocate of the idea that you get what you receive. At the end of the day, man, let's just be frank about this, man. Let's just be frank. Let's just be real about this, man. Black women don't want to be tone police, but they want to tone police when it comes to critique.
Thank you.
Related to them. But the real issue is they don't want to be critiqued. They just don't want to be criticized.
And but that's misogyny, sir. The misogyny.
No, it's not. No, that's bullshit. Because if you critique,
that's what they're identifying as misogyny and mislabeling. They're calling it misogyny because they have to hear something they don't like, which is not misogyny. But so many people in society have been convinced that that's what it is. Anything that offends women, that too many of us go with it. But excuse me, continue with what you were going to say. Sorry about
that. And I say that they have been infantilized. They have been infantilized. They cannot deal with criticism. They don't know what it means in a society that's supposed to be free, in a so-called, you know, democratic society. Think about this. Black men are the most criticized group in the United States of America. No one is criticized more than us. Okay. And but we have the sense, I think, collectively, to not, you know, go ballistic and become Unabombers and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? When we are critiqued. I mean, it's so normal. It's so, you know what? It's so normal and every day for us that we just brush it off our shoulders.
Exactly. It's like, okay, you have this to say. But I think more than anything else, in the past 60 years, black men have been subjected, and black women have been at the forefront of this, to tone policing. And quite frankly, it's couched in the terms of feminist thinking, right? It's called resisting the patriarchy, right? Or some other such kind of notion, which I think might even to some degree be cool to issue or to levy against white men. But it's not working for us because we didn't bring black people over here in slave ships. I mean, you know, like if we're ADOS or FBA, we didn't bring each other here. We didn't enjoy the privileges of the Homestead Act, FHA loans, GI bills. We were restricted. So, I mean, you know, all of this patriarchal stuff that we get, you know, issued, you know, this whole claim of sexism, which would be kind of like, you know, I remember watching Joy DeGruy and she talked about racism. And you know how like white people oftentimes use reverse racism as a way to counterman the kind of legitimate claims that black people make when they talk about the effects of racism, right? And so she would have white people raise their hand, like, what can you do with your racism to have an impact on the life of a black person? I can prevent them from getting a job. I can make sure that they, you know, can't have access to money, loans, and housing, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, you can go down a list. I can, you know, get the police to be called and to have this person arrested or create some sort of legal trouble for this individual. What can the black person do with his racism? So I make a similar argument when it comes to patriarchy for black men. Like, what can black men do with this so-called privilege and this patriarchy? What can we do with it? And that's the point. That's the problem, right? And nobody wants to look at this in a, like, with real, like with a real, through a real lens. Nobody wants to do this, right? So for the past 60 years, as soon as white feminism hit, and then you had people like Gloria Steinem trying to enlist black women on to this this struggle, black men have been lambasted consistently.
Mm-hmm.
They've been told how inadequate they are, how oppressive they are, how violent they are, how regressive they are, how inadequate they are, how recalcitrant they are to listen, as if just listening would, somehow evince the truth of all of these claims. Right?
And so how long do you think you can direct such vitriol and hatred towards a population before that population strikes back? How long?
Mm-hmm.
50 years, 100
Mm-hmm.
years? How long do you think that people are just going to sit back and just absorb all of the hatred? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you think even in Jim Crow, how long did people think that black people are going to sit back and just allow white racists to call them N-words? You know what I'm saying? Just forever, in perpetuity, and with everything that came with that, and not buck back. You know what I'm saying?
But that to me is tied to the expectation. They expected us to endure it indefinitely, so much so that the misandry that we talk about is so baked into the culture that it's an accepted norm. And to call it misandry is the abnormal aspect. That's considered the offense because it's so baked well in that most men that I run across don't even know what the word misandry means.
Mhm.
And when you tell them what it means and then give them a definition, they start to see it going back to childhood and their own family and their own upbringing. But until you call it out, it almost doesn't exist. And I say almost because sometimes we'll have a gut feeling that something's wrong, that something doesn't feel right. And much of the time, when they first run into finding out this information, all of the gut feelings they've ever had about that same feeling come back to them in an instant. And they can recognize it going back to childhood. But until it's called out, it's just an uneasy feeling a lot of the time for many of us. But for
And so,
women, it
mhm.
doesn't exist at all.
I continue to say this, that so misandry, the misandry that we've experienced as black men, um, within black society, particularly from black women, is just a mirror of racism. It's a
Mm,
mirror of white supremacy. You understand what I'm saying?
mhm,
And what is happening now is that many women, black women in particular, are responding to us in the same manner that white racists have responded and respond to black people when black people kick back or buck against acts of racism. You
mhm.
understand? So it's kind of like, even for the lack of a better example, like with the even most recent Black Lives Matter stuff. You know what I mean? And so, when Negroes getting shot down and killed in the street, and then you got black people running out in the street and protesting. You had all these white people talking about white lives matter and all that kind of stuff, and that racism doesn't exist and everything. I mean, we are dealing with the same type of phenomenon because black women, the ones that we're talking about, they don't think that misandry exists. They don't think that there is a hatred. When you say that there is a hatred directed towards black men, what they say to you is prove it. What is it?
Mhm.
And they sound like white people telling black people to prove the very existence of white supremacy.
But
Now
check.
I'm careful about calling them, white supremacists in the same fashion that real white supremacists exist. But what I'm saying is that they operate very similar to white people. So oftentimes, you can talk to, let's say, an individual black woman who has these sentiments. It is no different from talking to a racist white person.
Right. That's why I call them colonizing agents. I call feminists in particular black feminist nationalists because they're almost creating a whole politic distinct to black women solely but the majority of Black women who've been put to use for these agendas, I call them colonizing agents, not because they're evil people, but because they've been socialized into a worldview that only includes themselves and not even the boys and men in their lives. But the other part we have to call out in relation to what you just said, Dr. Neal, is when we're told to prove it, to prove that misandry exists, the gaslighting that takes place when you do. I got into a debate online a couple of years ago where somebody got on, and it was a feminist gay cat, and he said, well, "This misandry stuff is ridiculous. You're making this up. This is not real. This doesn't exist. Heterosexual Black men have never had to experience sexism of any sort." I said, "Well, what do you call lynching? What do you call the lynching of heterosexual Black men accused of violating white women? Accused with no court, no investigation, no evidence. What do you call that?" Well, you're just making this up. That's ridiculous. No, what you're doing is you're gaslighting, because I just did what you asked me to do. You asked me to prove it. You said it didn't exist. I proved it to you with evidence that you knew about, and you didn't have a response other than to tell me that I'm making it up.
And think about it. It's like you're talking to a racist white person.
It is.
Even if you're talking to a male, he could be a male feminist. He can be one of these male LGBTQ guys. It's like you're talking to a racist white person. They say prove it. It's like because you don't even know your own history. You don't even you don't know it. You've disregarded it. It means nothing to you. When I have been asked the same thing, I say, well, I start. My response is always with the boys. I say, look at the boys. I said, look at what's happening in kindergarten. Look what's happening in third grade. What's happening to Black? How come we're having these outcomes in terms of reading, science, and math? And why is it that we have these outcomes in light of the fact that they're in institutions that are controlled primarily by women, and that they're coming out of households controlled by women, yet they have the worst outcomes? How do you explain that?
Yes, sir, man. Before I move forward, I want to give a shout out to William A. Smith. Hey, man, Rude Dog, I see you.
Dr. Smith.
Yeah, I see you, dog.
Dr. Smith, what's going on, Dr. Smith? Good to see you, brother.
Mr. Heat, I appreciate that generous donation, man. Thank you so much, sir. I got a brother, cousin T. Tall. He's sitting in the back. I'm gonna bring him up for a minute and have him speak really quickly. But I want to kind of keep this conversation between us. But I do want to, and thank you, King, who says stop trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. It's a fruitless effort. And look, that's how Black men are beginning to feel. It's like we've listened to women over the past 60 years, and there's evidence of men absorbing the arguments of Black women and Black feminists in particular. I mean, this article is evidence that some men are willing to support the cause of Black women, even to their own detriment, even if it's self-effacing and self-abnegating. Even if there's hardly ever any quotations or citations that, draw back to data in order to demonstrate the verity of the claim being made. All we hear is just these assumptions. This is why Dr. Curry is important, although I would never, categorize him as being, anything other than who he is, a masculinist, somebody who's engaged in Black male studies. But I mean, he's like, look, when will we stop with the moralizing and the ideology and get to the actual study of Black people and the predicaments in which they exist? When will we start doing that? Because right now what we have, and I think Dr. Neal referred to this earlier, what we have is a situation in which all we're doing is engaging in sophomorish scholarship or like some sort of tabloid journalism. This is not a sophisticated articulation of what is occurring between Black folks, either when it comes to gender relationships or like intimate relationships. None of the reality is coming out, and that's why it's important for Black male scholars to be unapologetic in countering what I consider to be just it's spotty scholarship.
Well, let me just say, I think Dr. Curry would definitely call himself Black male studies. I don't think he would identify as black masculinist, but I'd have to talk with him. But I just wanted to add something to this. I'm sorry I'm stuck on this, but what Dr. Neal said it hit me really hard because he was so on point with this. When he gave the example about boys, there was something I wanted to ask before we moved on, Dr. Neal.
Mm-hmm.
When you've gotten the response from most particularly black women, when you pointed out the state of the boys, one of the things I've noticed in similar discussions is how hard they have a time not sounding like white people, especially in regard to an almost biological argument for female superiority. I wanted to ask you if you've run into that. That those when they have to explain why the girls are doing better and the women are doing better, like Rebecca Lynn Pope did recently, the women are running circles around black men. Do you notice a difficulty with them grappling with trying not to make a biological argument for their productivity versus black males? Do you see that?
I can't say that I've run into that. I would say that, when I do point it out that black boys are failing under the watch of women, the first thing they do is point to the absence of the father. They say, well, the fathers are not around. The father's not around. They deflect and put the blame somewhere else. So, it's not the mothers, and the mothers are doing the best they can and all this kind of stuff. It's that sort of thing. As far as what you're saying in terms of making that shift towards, explaining, the differences, because typically it doesn't go that far. You know what I mean? Because my thing is that the times I've had these kind of conversations, it's when, as I said before, women deny the very existence of misandry, and it's like, my strategy is to not look at men, but to look at boys. I think that misandry is most visible and demonstrated in the black male population at the level of boys and black male youth, in terms of how they're being raised and how they're being socialized and everything, by women and by the institutions that they're dealing with. I think that's where misandry hits us the hardest, right there, and then it affects us later on in life. But I can't say that I've gotten to many back and forths about why black girls are doing better. Now, I will say this: I've gotten into some interesting exchanges about how black girls are not doing better than black boys, right? So they will say, well, the prison, the prison, the public school, the prison pipeline is not limited to black boys. Girls are also affected. Girls are also being suspended. Girls are also being, penalized in schools and stuff like that. So what happens is they start to flatten stuff and make the argument that girls are doing just as bad as the boys.
Yeah, but the point is they already know. Like, look, nobody's going to dispute the fact that women from the out group, to some extent, are going to have, some sort of negative externalized impact related to, being an out group member. We know that that's going to occur. I mean, there's no way to escape it. But when you start looking at the data that demonstrates that men are hit the hardest, or that boys are hit the hardest, the first thing that's done is to flatten and to say, well, me too. It's happening to us too. But it is happening to us more. So if we die more, maybe you want to alleviate our dying, and perhaps maybe it will attenuate yours. Maybe perhaps if we're earning more money, perhaps maybe you'd earn more money. Because, I mean, I looked at the data on this, right? And recently I did a video about this, about Shaquille O'Neal basically says the sons got to go when they're 18,
Right.
but his daughters can stay.
Right.
Now, we already know that, like, black women right now are doing just as well as, or, sometimes even better than white women in terms of their income. Okay? So they've achieved racial parity in relation to income with white women. But it's the black boys, the black males, who are behind because they have nowhere near the same kind of earning power as black boys. I mean, or white boys. Okay? Even like black men that graduate from college oftentimes don't earn as much as white boys who just graduate from high school. Okay? So, but when you start to discuss these things and you start to bear out these issues and some of the reasons why and some of the reasons, you know, that explain black boys' failure, it's just dismissed. It's somehow not, you know, somehow like meeting, you know, or standing up to the paradigm developed by the black feminists, which is we got to look after ourselves first. And this just goes back to what Dr. Neal said earlier. Like, how long do you think y'all gonna look out for yourselves and only yourselves? And then we not gonna ever start looking out for our own selves. Like, I mean, you know, but black men have been socialized, like all men are socialized, to take on more risk and to sacrifice more for the sake of others. Although it's not often acknowledged, I mean, you know, like when it comes time to engage in risk to one's life and limb, it's typically men that go out there and do it. And it's not that way in all species. Like you talk about lions, the female lions are the ones who predominantly, you know, defend the pride. They're the hunters. The females are the hunters. Okay? I mean, in several other species, this is also the case, right? But when it comes to, you know, the human species, it's the men have to go, they got to die. If a whole bunch of people are going to be sacrificed, it's not like just some sort of flatness related to it. It's women and children first. The men die. It's like if there's a, you know, a breakdown in infrastructure, it's men who have to go out and fix it. Not to say that women don't take on any risk at all, but it's men predominantly who are taking on the risk. And it's socially acceptable. And not only that, it's almost as if men don't feel any pain. It's the same kind of thinking that went into, the racist kind of eugenics based, idea that like black people don't feel as much pain as white folks.
But
it's the same kind of thing.
And let me add to what you're saying about risk and in this discussion that we're having right here. So after you've endured as a population decades, generations, centuries of this hatred and vitriol as a group, as an outgroup, okay, you take a risk when you buck back against it, okay? As Dr. Johnson says, it's so normalized, everybody says it's normal, right? And so the natural response is that what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? We need to put you back in your place.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But what happens is that you have men, and here's where Kevin Samuels comes in again, and what we're doing with the Black Manosphere and all that kind of stuff. You have all of these black male forces who are saying, no, we are no longer going to sit on the sidelines and allow you to beat up on us anymore. And we are taking a risk, and we're willing to deal with whatever consequences come with that. Okay. One of the things that Kevin, and I appreciated him for this because Kevin had on various occasions in his broadcast, this is one thing I'll never forget. He spoke directly into the camera, particularly to professional black men, and said this to professional black men. Professional black men, it is time for you to stop being silent. It is time for you to open your mouths. It is time for you to vote with your feet. It is time for you to let your disdain be known for this state of affairs. You can't just rely. You just can't rely on people like me to push back against this. And I support you, and I appreciate your support. I'm just paraphrasing Kevin Samuels. And all of us in our own way, we do this. And so, taking these type of risk, and that's a masculine thing. You understand what I'm saying? And it's a male thing. And what is it related to? It's related to survival. It's a response to something that's broken. Something is broken. Something does not work. something needs to be corrected, something needs to be fixed. And the risk that we're taking in this space, this global internet, all right, is about correcting the problems that we have been dealing with for decades and even centuries. And this response to Kevin Samuel's death is just indicative, okay, of the people who are deeply uncomfortable, people who have accepted the idea that Black men are disposable and have never and never anticipated a day when Black men would actually buck back against, their position in society. So risk is at the center of everything that we're doing.
I want to give a shout out to some people, and then I got cousin T-Tall here, man, and I want him to say a few words before we get back to it. Sir Anthony, I appreciate you, sir. Appreciate that, man. Greg, appreciate that, bro. I want to give a shout out to Joe from DC, man. I know I'm not dropping bombs right now, but man, I appreciate it, bro. Appreciate that. I might drop one just for you, man. Yeah, I haven't dropped the bomb, man. I mean, cause the dialogue I think is substantive enough, man, to where I don't need a whole bunch of theatrics. But cousin T-Tall, man, I want you to go ahead and get what you got to get off your chest, man. Talk to us, man.
Well, as always, first of all, salute to the distinguished panel of PhDs. In case no one says it enough, we all appreciate, value, and love your contributions to this space, and look forward to seeing you all as a permanent fixture here, giving us the guiding light of scholarship that this space needs. With that being said, in keeping with the subject matter, I appreciate these conversations that are happening this weekend regarding Kevin Samuels. He meant so much to this space, but I think to keep it brief, we can sum it up with this. Just as a completely unscientific experiment, anybody who can do this, if you pull up Kevin Samuels' video page, you pull up and you compare it to MSNBC, compare it to CNN, compare it to CBS News, and look at the numbers, all right? If we want to talk about tangible metrics that reflect impact, okay? You want to talk about someone running circles around someone else, that is a metric that is tangible, that will stand the test of time, that no one can take away from the result of all of the work, all of the conversations that have taken place in this space, over the last 10 years, but more recently in the last 2 years. And Kevin Samuels represented a concentration of all of that work, all of the experience, all of the due diligence, because as you gentlemen know, you can't really hold a substantive conversation in a space like this without bringing the data, without bringing statistics, without bringing evidence from the real world to your conversation. And I think that the Kevin Samuels experience embodied all of those aspects of this particular collective. And salute to you guys for keeping this conversation going. I hope this momentum continues. I know it'll continue, and I hope that because of the events that happened this weekend, it's a moment that most people take, if not all, to observe exactly what you men are discussing right now. And I think you're highlighting perfectly the potential of this moment. And the potential of this moment is a shift in the public consciousness in regards to Black men. And so salute to you guys, and salute to the
Salute to you, brother. Salute to you.
Salute to you, man. I appreciate you coming by. I want to address something real quick, man. So you got somebody that came by the name of Anco, and she says, why does the Manosphere block any opposing views? I don't see women blocking the way you males do. Lord. It's like you can't handle an opinion. That's a sign of stunted emotional development, cowards. Yeah, so this is the one thing I want to say. Look, I'm putting it out here. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your educational background is. If you want to have a debate with me, a conversation with me on one of my shows, pick a day. Pick a day and we can make it happen. I'm saying pick a day.
Lord, she doesn't know.
We can talk about anything. You want to talk about domestic violence? We can have a conversation about that. I have over 300 articles. You want to talk about sexual assault and rape and victimization? We can have a conversation about that. And look, I've taken 3 graduate seminars in feminist philosophy. So I know what the arguments are. I've read Mary Wollstonecraft all the way up to Kimberly Crenshaw, Brittany Cooper, Christy Dotson, all the new jacks.
I'm sorry. Gigi.
Yeah.
I think this is a very uninformed person.
But I'm just saying, I get it. I get it.
I get it.
I'm not talking to her specifically, Ron. All I'm saying is, bro, and anyone out there, I am ready to have the dialogue with the people who, like, with a person like who wrote this article. I'm ready to have a dialogue with Zach Lindley. I wish he would come to my format. I wish he would have a conversation with me on the Green Gorilla channel. If he wants me to go to his outlet, as long as it's balanced and fair debate and there's not any rhetorical devices and cutoffs taking place and there's an actual dialogue, we can have an actual dialogue.
But let me say,
if somebody wants it, we can get it.
But let me say this though, and people like Anko are really quite common, and you know, but the ahistoricalities of what bothers me is these women come along and say that, you know, well, you know, you black men are doing this, you're not doing this, you're not listening to us, you're not willing to have the discussion. For the last 40 fucking years, the discussion has been one way. It has been one way, from talk shows to magazines to TV shows to movies to literature. It has been a one-way discussion where black feminists and black feminist oriented women have been able to get into Hollywood and have a major platform at their disposal. And they did not ask for black men's responses. We were told to sit quietly, listen, and take it in. And when we finally started to speak back, which didn't really begin to happen until years after these public social media platforms were created. And it took us a while to figure out how to use it. And then it took us a while to figure out what the use of it could be. And then black men started to compare notes. It's only in the last decade that black men have started to respond to shit that has been out in the public since the late 1970s.
And most of it, hold on, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Comes in talking about a one-way discussion. Shit that pisses me off. You are so ahistorical in this that you think that the last 6 months or the last 2 years with Kevin on social media, on Instagram and on YouTube, somehow constitutes an oppression to black women because they've had to hear something distasteful. But you didn't grow up in an era where you had to listen and be told that you were everything from a misogynist to a monster to a rapist simply because you had a penis. And your own mothers and sisters and aunts would drag you to these horrible misandrous movies and make you read these books as if they were edifying. But they were doing nothing but dehumanizing black men and boys. And you got the nerve to come up here talking about one-way discussions. You don't get the hell out of here with that.
Yeah, you can go ahead and say it on my channel, man. You can say it, bro.
And let me say this. And let me say this. We only debate our intellectual equals. All others we teach.
I hear you, Dr. Henry Clark. I hear you, Dr. Henry Clark. But look. All I'm saying. First of all, I've always wanted to have a dialogue. I am an open book. But what I don't take is disrespect. All the coward language and all that bullshit. See, that's gonna make me. You don't want to see me turn into Hulk smash, because I'll go off on a motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't care. I'm from the mud, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck if you're a feminist. If you're 8 to 80, I don't give a fuck. You got a blind eye. If you on some bullshit, I'm gonna tell you. It's just I'm just that candid. I'm open like that. But if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. if there's some, like black men have been admitting that there are some problems that they have over the course of this so-called past 60 years. Black men have taken responsibility for some of the fucked up shit that they do. I have yet to hear, especially at these so-called sophisticated academic levels, any accounting for the fucked up shit that women are doing out here.
Right. Right.
That's the problem we got. Because we
One-sided.
know it's going to matriculate into popular culture. So what you've done is, look, I call it slave morality. If you want to, you start talking about Nietzsche. All right, but I don't even want to go there. But the whole point is, it's guilting language. And Kevin Samuels, he can break shit down simplistically so everybody can understand it. As soon as men say something that women don't like, the first thing they say is, you're crying, you're complaining, you're acting like a woman. So it's self abnegating to begin with, because it's bullshit behavior when women do it or when men do it, so to speak, if there's no justification for it. But asking for, basically men standing up for themselves and saying, look, the way you're portraying us is not accurate. That's cultural imperialization and marginalization that you're engaged in. If we say that, then you ain't manning up. As if, manning up means, basically, just deferring to everything someone else says about them. Like if you cry, stop crying. That's not manly. If you criticize, well, you're bitching, you're bitching. Or you're a coward or something like that. You're scared.
Well, he called it sign language, right? Shame, and he got it, from BGS. Shame, insult, guilt, and the need to be right. And to have it put together that succinctly, it really slapped many of us in the face, because we grew up with sign language. Look, when you get sign language from your grandmother and your mother, you don't take it as something to be offended about. You take it like it's normal because you grow up with it. But when a brother actually frames it for you, and then you start to notice how often you get it, it changes your whole worldview. That's what Anco came in here trying to do. Shaming, right? Insulting, trying to guilt us. And of course, she needed to be right. And we get that so often. It's time to call that shit out. And that's one of the things I appreciate Kevin doing, because Kevin would do it. He would tell you what sign language was, and he would demonstrate it to you by breaking it down with the next woman that gave him sign language.
It's like, okay, so one of the things that they did was they would try to, insult him by saying either he was gay, he was effeminate, or they would say that, somebody hurt him, so he's toxic.
Right.
Like, I've taken full responsibility for toxicity. I call myself the Toxic Avenger. I don't give a damn about it. Not anymore. I don't even care about being labeled a misogynist. I don't care anymore. All of this shit has lost its teeth anyway.
There you go.
It's become hyperbolic bullshit.
Yeah.
Anytime you got a group of people now, like you got trans activists right now, who basically are saying that, like, if you don't accept everything about biology that they accept, which is based upon, Foucaultian, fucking philosophical bullshit, deconstruction. Like, if you don't accept every portion of what it is that they articulate related to their own conception of themselves, that you're engaged in an act of violence. No, I just think that, like, I don't want to have a girlfriend with a 9-inch dick. That's what I think, bruh. Or sis. It's just what it is. Now, I mean, the whole point is the woke has become sleep now. Because these people are not really actually woke at all. This is not an awakened state of dialogue or anything. All it is slave morality, where you do as best you can to try to take people that you perceive as powerful and to make them feel guilty such that they'll pull back or draw back. That's all this is. And then the question is, like, what gain do you get from that in the long run? And Nietzsche was correct about this to a certain extent. No one prospers from this. Guilt is not a great motivator. In the end, you can sell it, but if you're not selling the truth with it, you're really not getting us anywhere. And and men have been guilty for so damn long. And it's unfortunate that so many men have bought into this, man. Like even feminists from the second wave, like particularly Camille Collier, she's like, man, men have become like little weenie men, whingers and shit, quislings to their own selves when they engage in this virtue signaling and grandstanding. Like some of what the comments that you see on the screen now. All I can say about Kevin Samuels is, if you spend your time disrespecting people in life, don't be surprised at people disrespecting you in death. No matter how cruel it may be, the legacy you leave behind will be known by the fruit you bore while you were here. Now, but the problem is, nobody has a problem when women are calling men scrubs and dusties and shit and bullet bags.
Thank you.
And nakers.
Gigi, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead, man.
When you read through these kind of comments, what's your impression about whether or not these people have even watched a show from Kevin Samuels? Do you think they watched it, or do you think they heard from others what he said?
I think they watched the clips. They watched they went through the greatest hits. They watched Kevin Samuels' most savage moments. Mm-hmm. That's what they saw.
So no content.
Not really. I mean, and first of all, like, this is why it's important for people like us to break this shit down for people like them. Because see, what these guys will do is, they're part of the so-called woke mob. I mean, they consider themselves to be on the right side of justice, right? They got all the right talking points. They've taken all the courses, but they haven't done second and third order reflection on the ideals being presented. And look, we've been this way to some degree ourselves, okay? Like, I mean, but you can't take everything at face value. You can't believe everything anyone is telling you. Okay. Now we already know. Look, philosophy is great. I love it. Okay. But we already know where philosophy stands in ranking with other disciplines related to its fruitfulness. English as well. History as well. Like, I mean, look, I'm not to say that these disciplines are outdated. They're not. But they have to be tempered with other research methodology. So, I mean, I don't want to hear theories that emanate from philosophy that people don't even fucking understand to begin with, because they haven't even taken philosophy courses. They don't even know what the fuck they're articulating.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's basically like, a 19-year-old discovering Christianity for the first time, right? And they have absolutely no clue about what came before them. And if you're 19 years old and you're discovering Christianity for the first time, you think that you're the first person to discover Christianity.
And then you start proselytizing. You become, some zealot related to the ideology. But I mean, this is a way to engage in what I would consider to be, like almost like a Roman mob, where you can participate in, deciding someone's fate. You can ruin them, give your approval by thumbs up and you're down. Right? And it's almost like McCarthyism. Or it's almost like the Salem witch trials or some shit like the witch there he be or she be or whatever the case may be. Or like calling somebody, like during the McCarthyan era a communist or something like that. That's a commie. Right? Or like in Nazi Germany calling somebody a Jew.
Right.
This is the quality of debate in America has slid down. We're not like, I just remember the dialogue that was taking place amongst black folks during the time that like Tony Brown's Journal was on the air, and other shows where you had black thinkers coming together and arguing, opposite points of view. Even white folks had better quality of debate than they're having now. Cable television network destroyed substantive debate in this country, man. I'm not saying that it wasn't helpful or useful for some purposes, but I mean, magazine shows have ruined journalism. And the question is when will journalism and critical thinking reemerge? When will it resurface? Now, I don't have a problem with accepting some things that feminists say, but all of it, especially people who hide behind it, like almost like it's a veneer over, the wickedness that exists within, or the decaying tooth that exists within. Like a lot of people can conceal, their misandry within the framework of being a promoter of justice. And that's the problem we have, man.
Well, you can see the problem with the range of options. Like if you look at Africana studies, right? You got Pan-Africanists, you got feminists, you got Marxists, you know what I mean? You have all kinds of different aspects of it. It's multidisciplinary, you got different ideologies, so on and so forth. Whenever I've worked with women and gender studies programs, when I start looking at what they're talking about, feminism is the primary operating ideology. And when I ask about alternatives, other issues, other approaches, you get this glazed look because there's no other acceptable approach in the field. What field do you know has one ideology? There's a problem. That's like going into philosophy and saying that only one ideology should hold.
This is why, like, I have videos I've done on this. I can't cover that here, but the outcome is already preordained. Exactly. With these kind of disciplines.
Exactly.
You don't have to demonstrate any data. I mean, you can, but basically people cook the books. And anything that emerges that's contradictory to the main assumptions of the discipline is going to be characterized as misogynistic or, misogynoistic or some other negative epithet is going to be hurled at it. I'm pretty sure Tommy Curry faced the same kind of accusations and allegations with his work.
Listen, man, listen. Here's the elephant. This is the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that women in gender studies, driven by feminism, has contributed to anti-intellectualism in the United States. That's the elephant in the room.
I had to give a bomb for that one, man. Yes.
No one wants to say it. No one wants to say it because feminist thought is repressive.
But you know what?
It is intellectually repressive. Let me tell you something. I remember reading Ishmael Reed years ago, and he was talking about so-called male feminists, some black male feminists. And he was saying what he said about these black male feminists. He said that their creativity is being destroyed. Their capacity for genius is being diminished because of their commitments to feminism. And when I saw that, him saying that, it blew me away. And you got guys, and there are guys they're full professors right now, who have sacrificed their brilliance at the altar of feminist commitments.
Most of which, look, I tell people all you got to do is look at history. And you'll see that, look, you got different classes of people. Not all women are from lower classes. Not all men are from upper classes. Not all men and women are in the same socioeconomic classes. All women, like, I try to say this, like, take Betty Friedan, for instance, right? Think about Mike Brown and the social position he occupied, and think about Betty Friedan. Mm-hmm. Who the fuck is privileged there? Is it Betty Friedan or is it Mike Brown? Mm-hmm. Now, some people would say, well, black males have privilege. Privilege to get fucking shot down in the street. Now, if Betty Friedan was in the hood doing the same shit that Mike Brown was doing, do you think she would have got fucking shot? Even if she fucking spazzed out, do you think she would have got shot and killed for it?
Hell no.
Not at all. No. Because the most protected group of people in this culture are white women. Let's face it. That's the facts.
But they would tell you that because Mike Brown got more attention than somebody else, that's the basis of the privilege. And I've even heard black feminists speak this way, right? That's the basis of the privilege. And if you can't accept your privilege, then you're X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, but I
That's
mean,
what they're basing this argument at this point. He was still laying in the damn street, and I heard this. This kind of
man, that look, I'm from St. Louis, man. And like that complex that he got shot in, I used to have a little chick I was, smashing up in there. Canfield Courts, whatever the department is. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, you can't, man, look, all the metrics point to the fact that in relation to being surveilled by the police and being subjected to violence by the state, whether it be a federal, local, or municipal, it's black men.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who come close are Native American peoples. They're the only ones that come close. So, I mean, like, and we already said, look, 12 black women die a year. That's being, like, that's exaggerating, okay? A year from police violence. But everyone dies from police violence in America. It's a violent place, okay? But we're worried about the disproportionate amount of violence being directed towards us. It's not that there's no violence that happens to you at all, but there's a disproportionate amount of violence that happens to black men. We get violence from other black men. We get violence from our mothers. We get violence from our sisters, from our intimate partners. But it's easy to say that it's men, because white women created this narrative. One of the first persons to create this whole narrative about intimate partner violence was Ellen Pence and Michael Paymer. And they basically admitted, well, at least Ellen Pence did. Look, I was trying to use guilt in order to sell this idea so we could lock more people up. Mm-hmm. But she recanted and said, I made it up. She wrote a fucking scholarly article about it. Look, I was engaged in confirmation bias. But people still utilize that research. Yeah. Even after the individual who came up with the research recanted.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is that it is not an attribute or a virtue of feminists to renounce previous positions. Okay. And so, and you've seen the stuff I've written. The only feminist that I have read who has recanted a previous position is Patricia Hill Collins. She's the only one. She's the only one. Yeah. In her 2004 book she wrote in Black Sexual Politics, she recanted her position on black men. Yeah. And she's the only one.
The movie theater.
Yeah, the movie theater thing. And, up until, that book came out in 2004. She wrote her first book in 1990 and what have you, and had written a whole bunch of articles since then and all that, and, going in on black nationalists and everything like that, black power and everything. And she had to see what was going on with the younger generation, and to reflect more deeply on her own experiences. Right. As someone growing up in the time that she grew up in, to see things differently. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. There are other women from her generation, because Collins right now, she's in her 70s. Okay. And you have women, feminists and womanists, who are either on their way to retirement or they're already in retirement, who had the same type of epiphany as Collins, but have not in print. They have not in print recanted or repudiated previous positions. But they're not going to do that.
But here's the problem, because there's two more I can talk about. Athena Matua did something similar when she recognized that intersectionality did not include black men adequately enough. She started to develop multi-dimensionality, I believe it was, and started talking about these realities. But I think the biggest one was Michelle Wallace, when she talked about Black Macho and how much of it was based on a couple of black men. But here's the fundamental problem. Even when they recant, even when it's in writing, right? the snowball has avalanche. The snowball has grown to the point where, and this is something Dr. Tommy Curry told me about. He had this experience at a conference where he was debating and he brought up Michelle Wallace, or at least the subject came up, and he talked about her recanting her position and clarifying how she wrote her book. And the problem was the young feminists that were in his face trying to argue with him didn't know who Michelle Wallace was. So the arguments that fed into this avalanche right now, they're not even always trained on where the arguments come from. So when there's a recanting, there's not a reversal of the impact of those ideas. I grew up with that Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman book on my mother's shelf in the living room every day of my life. Even before I could read, I remember the cover sitting on the shelf. And the ideas that women picked up on and internalized from that era are so baked in. Even when you tell them that the book is not accurate, they just blink and look at you blinking like, so what? So how do you engage that?
Because I think the strain of anti-intellectualism is so deep within those camps that there's almost nothing you could do, about it. I tell you this, I remember seeing a Black studies person, Black woman, talking about, I'm not going to say her name, but she's a full professor, talking about the difficulty that she had getting young Black women in her classes to read anything that was published prior to 1980. Okay, and they just completely, they resisted. They did not want to learn anything about even Black women that came before them. And I can only say, and I can say I've experienced some of that stuff in my own teaching experience. You know what I mean? I mean, I've had women, I've had students, most recently reject Toni Morrison. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, this woman just died within the last 5 years, and you can barely, sit through anything that she's written. You know what I'm saying? And so there's something
I remember when feminists attacked bell hooks. Do you remember that?
I remember that. And there was a moment even in Bell Hooks' own sojourn while she was living, where there were younger women who were very resistant to the stuff that she, had said. They didn't even want to read her or what have you. Because we created a culture. A culture has been created where you don't have to evaluate ideas. Where these, just taken for granted lived experience, or what is taken to be lived experience, that is unexamined, uncritical, and very juvenile relations between men and women. So you have, and I've had this teaching, man, where you have, some 20-year-old who has come to the conclusion that all men are trash and ain't nothing. And they've only had 1 or 2 boyfriends.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And they haven't been, nobody, the daddy didn't touch him, the uncles didn't touch him. But because their boyfriend cheated on them, everybody is messed up.
Yeah.
Man, look, look, man. These women, man, look, all I can say is, look, at some point, like the academy, if it has integrity, if there's any integrity left in it, it will correct this. But at the same time, we don't know, though, because the academy is invested in this.
Yes.
And, I mean, to the extent to which, you have to, when you fill an application for a position at a university, you have to also write a diversity and inclusion statement. Which is bullshit. Most of the people hired at universities are white men and women. They make up the bulk of the professorate. Okay, the professorate. They do. It's just the reality. Okay. And you mean these motherfuckers writing diversity and inclusion statements about what? What are they fucking dedicated to and being inclusive about? They're dedicated to having the right kind of tokens around. That's it. And they might associate with these people outside of the context of the classroom or the office, But like these people are not really. These motherfuckers ain't John Brown out here, man. These people are not like, you know, the white freedom riders risking life and limb to change the social conditions in America.
It's a joke, man.
It's grandstanding and virtue signaling and checking out. I mean, it's dotting I's and crossing T's in order to do what has to be. It's bureaucracy. Okay, but I mean, you know, but it's shallow. It's non-substantive. It's fake. It's bullshit. Okay, but nobody in the academy, save for a few people, are willing to say anything about these ladies, man, or to talk to them about their discipline. And the problem is that many of these people have English degrees and philosophy degrees. I'm just saying, you know, like, I mean,
I think you're generous with the philosophy.
Yeah,
I think it's mostly English, but go ahead.
Yeah. But okay, but
and
you have
they're in other areas too, man.
However, they are, but I mean, primarily they're in the humanities. Primarily the humanities, man. And all white men did was say, it's gonna sound crass, get these bitches a fucking department and let them do what the fuck they want to do. And that's our diversity right there. We don't go to what they talk about other than here and there. We'll hear somebody give a talk, but fuck them. Let them do what they do.
I mean, and that's what Camellia Paglia said, right? That, you know, those departments were created, you know, to accommodate them, you know, because the other traditional departments wouldn't. And she was talking about like women and gender studies and all that kind of stuff in the 1970s and everything. But the same type of mentality persists, you know, today. And no one, administrators don't touch it. You know what I mean? And it is what it is, man.
And it's part of the problem is the way that the university is organized. It's all bureaucracy now, where you have administrators who don't teach. They don't have any like teaching responsibilities. They're not part of the faculty. They're in an administrative class, right? And all they're trying to do is, you know, fulfill the objectives and the mission statement as, you know, dictated by the regents or, you know, by the higher ups in, you know, higher administrative positions, which all it is about money. How can we get more students enrolled? And how can we charge them the highest amount of fucking money as possible? Like the university system has become a joke now. We don't prepare kids for critical thinking. We prepare them for careers. You know, and it is what it is. But I want to get back to Kevin Samuels, man. You know, so you got this guy named Ernest Owens. He says Kevin Samuels has made a career off of shamelessly disgracing black women for profit. He emboldened the most toxic individuals to project tired and harmful narratives about black women. Dead or alive, what a disgraceful life to live. That's all I've got for that misogynist. I guess he got his motherfucking woke point for the day. He got 33,000 of them.
33,000, wow.
Okay. He says, I don't know why people having the opinion, if you're glad Kevin Samuels dead, you might be weird. Everything I saw about that man was him being misogynistic, fat-phobic, and anti-black, and he just constantly perpetuated harmful rhetoric and bigotry to incels. Who cares either way, to be honest? And here's the thing, right? I want to say something about that. How many, like these women who were calling into Kevin Samuels didn't want fat men?
Uh-oh.
They want a motherfucking 6'3", making 100,000, looks devilishly handsome with a 12-inch dick.
Lizzo.
But me, you know, I look like my friend said this the other day, it fucked me up. She looks like a trash bag with a whole bunch of shoe boxes in it.
Oh, damn.
But she wants some motherfucking goddamn, what's the name? Idris Elba. Motherfucker that looks like him.
You wanted Chris Evans, shit.
Yeah.
Captain America.
Lizzo.
Like, explain how that works. So you can have a checklist a mile long, but if a guy has any checklist himself, that's a problem.
No.
So I mean, and then Kevin Samuels actually telling black women, look, what's your dress size? How tall are you? It's really not an invalid, like it's not an immoral question to ask, because like the black population is as obese as it is. It's the truth.
Yeah, the whole population,
But
male and female. I mean, and that's not trying to be,
it's the fact.
It's the truth.
But here's the problem, though. There is a movement for women, and black women at that, as far as accepting this, right? When we talk about body acceptance, when is the last time you saw body acceptance being applied to not only men, but black men? When's the last time you saw overweight black men being fawned over, where you had articles written in feminist-based magazines talking about how you should desire overweight men? Even if it's happened, it's been a one-off. It has not been widespread in any significant way. This whole body positivity dynamic is exclusive to women.
It's comical when it comes to men, right? I mean, you just to fathom it, to think about it, and even if you present it, and I've seen some of the efforts, some of the attempts by some of the fashion people to show big men, in whatever garb they're in, promoting positivity. That stuff it rolls off a woman's back, you know what I mean, like water off a duck's back, you know what I'm saying? And so it's silly, it is ridiculous. So if it's silly and ridiculous for men, you know what I mean, why can't we just be honest and say it's silly and ridiculous for women? Because nowhere in the world that's ever going to fly, not especially not in the United States. That's never going to fly.
The problem with America and weight is that we eat too much processed foods and sugary drinks, man. And we don't exercise. We live a sedentary lifestyle. Those are the facts. We don't commute by walking or riding a bicycle. We get in our cars. We don't go up the steps. We take elevators, and then we go to lunch and we have we upsize the meal. This is just what it is. The portions that we eat are bigger than anywhere else in the world. It just is what it is. So that's one of the reasons why, we have a problem related to weight. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think the aesthetic issue is relevant as well, especially in the black community, because part of what we have, and women have said this repeatedly in social media and in other spaces, we don't dress for you. The way we carry ourselves, the way we do our hair, we do our makeup, it's not for you. And they're telling men this. Our dynamic in the black community, as far as how we define the aesthetic for how black women present themselves, is based on an aesthetic that's not necessarily connected to what men desire. And this is a problem in and of itself, because traditionally men and women present themselves in relation to what the opposite sex finds attractive. But since feminism's rise, our women take pride in telling us that their presentation has nothing to do with any standards that we value. So if you tell her you don't like weaves, you tell her you don't like BBLs and implanted breasts, if you tell her X, Y, and Z, you don't like skin lightening or blue-eye contacts or whatever, I don't dress for you. So the aesthetic, on top of what you just framed in terms of the weight dynamic that both black men and women have an issue with, the very definition of what's attractive when it comes to black women is an aesthetic that they've designed among themselves and damn near for themselves, that only takes men into account secondarily, if not in some tertiary fashion. We're in the background somewhere.
And their calculus consigns them to, as Kevin says, dying alone. Get a dog and die alone. I mean, let them, the standards that they have created, render them in that hellhole, okay? Because the reality is it doesn't bend men towards them in any way. It's like they're trying to bend spoons like Buddhists. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't. It doesn't work. Let me say, shout out to fitness for you, man. I see you in there.
I see you too,
Exercise,
bro.
brothers.
Yeah, man.
Exercise. Drink water, guys. Drink
Yeah,
water.
get your shit under control, man. I mean, like one of the there is something called the philosophy of sport. And one of the things you have to be aware of with your body, man, is if you don't use it, it atrophies, man. If you don't use your body as you age, I mean, of course, everybody undergoes entropy, man. As you age, but if you don't keep your body in motion, man, it loses its capacity to be in motion. So put it in motion when you can. I mean, you don't have to do something that's super strenuous, but just do a little bit. Okay.
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
That's the body dynamic, but the other thing that Kevin has been maligned for is introducing popular culture, mainstream culture, to the very idea of the dating and sexual marketplace. He's been held accountable, and he's received a great deal of the ire behind the introducing the concept of a marketplace of sexual market value. Now, these aren't concepts that he came up with, but he introduced many people, especially the Black community, to the idea, which many found offensive. But the reality of it is it's always existed. And so people resent the presentation of human engagement on an intimate level as a marketplace. But at the end of the day, it really has always been one.
Yeah.
And he merely just suggested these are the value systems for men and for women. Men don't get a pass in the marketplace.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Are well aware of the marketplace when it suits their interests. If you have an overweight man who hasn't bathed and don't have a job and he approaches you, women get real clear about the marketplace in that instance. You're not on my level, sir. You're not on my level. I don't want. But when the situation is reversed, what are you talking about? That's a dehumanizing concept. What do you mean a marketplace? We're not products on a shelf, but men are products on a shelf when convenient. But the reality of the marketplace, all Kevin did was say, look, this is the engagement. And if you want something from the marketplace, then you have to understand what those particular people want from you.
Exactly.
But listen, let me say this, man. But here's the thing, man. So, because it's cold. I mean, when you talk about when we talk about these dynamics in terms of markets and the way the women have reacted to it, I mean, it puts them into a tailspin, right? Because they are forced to look at themselves in a way in which they have never been compelled to do. Okay. And this is it creates an excess. A part of it is that Kevin Samuels has created an existential crisis. Or I'm not gonna say he created it, right? But let's say that he has spoken to an existential crisis among women, which might have been inflated after they've encountered his content. and I think we have to take into consideration the fact that really, as Black people, we don't have an introverted orientation. We don't have an orientation where we do introspection, when we do self-examination. So much of Black culture is over the top and extroverted and in your face and all that kind of stuff, that when we are compelled to do any type of internal self-examination, it's shocking. And I think that Black women, more so than Black men, are shocked and thrown into this crisis even further when they're forced to look at themselves in the mirror. So I think all this stuff we're talking about is emblematic of all of that.
Here we got another one, man. Kevin Samuels hated all the women I love. Women I love. Fat women. Like, look, look, man. This is the thing that fucks me up, right? Like, man, look, man, just cut it out, man. Like, you gonna be proud having Lizzo on your arm or fucking Sierra on your arm, man. Like, what's gonna make you the most proud, man?
But
or you know, like the most, like, you know, like look at my woman. You know what I'm saying? Like Lizzo
but even
or
still,
fuck
man, I don't look. Even if a cat is proud of that, I don't have a problem with that. I ain't gonna judge. That's your woman. Do your thing. But the question on the table is, what do we see in the majority? What happens with the majority? What are the practices of the majority? See, everybody wants to break this down into the granular, singular. Well, what you know, when Kevin generalized, it didn't apply to me and my girl. Well, but that's not the question. The question is, when we look at the aggregate, when we step back and look at the majority, what do we see the practices are? So the question isn't so much, do you want to have an overweight woman on your arm? Is what do the majority of men choose when they have the option? You know what I mean? What does the aesthetic that's most desirable illustrate about people's choices? And this is why I dug some of the work coming out of the study with what is it, OK Cupid, and some of the dating sites, when they began to tabulate that data that showed us what people's choices were about mates over 1 million different couplings. You started to see that there are overarching practices, there are overarching decisions that lend themselves to one direction over another. But disingenuous folk want to complicate the argument by talking about a relationship they had 5 years ago, or better yet, someone else they heard about, a friend of a friend. She dated a guy that was 350 pounds. So yeah, women like big men. Yeah, but that's not the question. This isn't about these individual anecdotes. What can we say about the majority? And at the end of the day, one of the things Kevin would tell people is that the more a man had status, means, wealth, so on and so forth, the more he would tend to choose younger, prettier women. That doesn't offend me. That doesn't bother me. It's a reality. And let me just say this last piece to it. We all had this experience from K through 12. You remember when you were in middle school, the girls, the cutest girls in the school dated high school guys. When you were in high school, the cutest girls either dated upperclassmen or college dudes. When you were in college, the prettiest girls dated men who were out in the world, who own property and own businesses. Let's stop playing like we don't know what this is. Women do this all day. It's only a problem when men point out that men have options too. But women have always known they've had options, and nobody had a problem with it. So when Kevin was really talking about this marketplace, women's contributions to the marketplace have always been known. We've all grown up seeing it, and nobody cared until one brother said, no, men have options too. Our options come later. And for the most part, they don't come about until we achieve in the world. Then all of a sudden it became sexist. When the pretty 17-year-old, wants to date the hot college dude, or the pretty 21-year-old wants to date the dude who's 50 years old, who's a millionaire, who owns a mansion, who just got a divorce, and he's coming after the 21-year-old hot girl that has about $50 in her bank account, ain't nobody got a problem with it then. But it's the same marketplace.
But
yeah, look
at what this guy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look at it. So all the women that he loves, who showed up to Kevin Samuels' platform every night, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Fat women, ambitious women, women over 30, women with standards, black women that like sex, the black girls that want to be taken care of. All them jokers are there. Those are the ones who showed up to this platform. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's what kept us. Instagram, on Facebook, and what have you, that ultimately led them having almost 1.5 million subscribers. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you don't speak for these women, homie. He can't. Numbers don't lie.
He's one of the hottest. One thing, look, you can say all you want to say about Kevin Samuels. One thing you can say was he's a fucking social media star, bro. He was a social media star.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And he came from the mud. I mean, he went from small time to big time. He got viral. He went viral. And, he had some talking points from the Black Manosphere. But I think at the end of the day, Kevin Samuels was a realist, man. He's like, look, this is what you want. This is what you got to deal with in order to get it. This is what you got to look like to get it, or what's going to increase your likelihood of being able to get it. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're 5'4", you weigh 280 pounds, you got 2 kids with, 2 different baby daddies, it probably is not going to happen for you. Not disrespectful, just keeping it 100.
Yeah,
Shout out to Marcus, by the way. Shout out to Marcus.
And if a so-called high value dude deals with you, it's gonna be for a short period of time. He just gonna have fun with you, gonna have sex with you. He gonna pump and dump you. That's about it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, man. I'm gonna keep it raw and funky. You know what I'm saying? I mean, fat chicks. Come on, man. You know, fat, cute, chunky chicks. You know what I'm saying? They nice for fun. You know what I'm saying? You know, guys don't want to be seen out in public with them. You know what I mean? But you know, they're good to hang out with in your apartment.
That's like
your house.
That reminds me of Young Dolph. He's deceased. He was like, man, don't talk to me in public. Ugh. Why you talking to me in public? Which is ignorant, but you know, hey, man. So look what Sleepy said. You're a sick person if you're celebrating Kevin Samuel's death. Me. Yeah, okay, well. Kevin Samuels called women over 35 leftovers, and in less than a week, his ass became a bag of bones. Which priestess is responsible? I'm tipping today.
Yeah, see, I talked about
that's too much right there. That's like one thing. Look, bell hooks died. Motherfuckers didn't start singing. Can we have a brand new day like the Wicked Witch of the West was fucking killed?
But that's what I was pointing out. Toni Morrison, you know, bell hooks, Maya Angelou, and you know, you didn't see black men putting together public presentations to celebrate their deaths. And you know the response I get from many black women, well, that's not true. I know a guy who said she deserved to die. No, the question is, on a mass level, are you seeing black men dancing on the graves of black feminists who spent decades maligning these men and calling them anti-human? Like, you didn't see that. When these women died, most brothers, if they had a problem with her, didn't say anything. But when it comes to black men that they don't like, all kinds of, I mean, basically they're talking about some kind of idea of spiritual murder, right? Like they just use their powers to kill a man. Okay. But we still in a white supremacist context where we're the poorest people with 2% of the wealth. So, you know, if you got all these powers, I'm trying to understand what the fuck you doing with them. You matter at a black man on YouTube, and you ain't use these magical powers to actually change the conditions for black folk as a whole. But okay, let's put that aside for the moment. So you want to, that's ridiculous. You know, it's ridiculous. But you want to sit here and celebrate the death of man. And here's the problem. So you got some of these that are misusing traditional spiritual practices. You got some that are doing the same with Christianity. They're calling his death, right, the God's punishment. And they're doing this from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. So whether it's the indigenous, practices extended from Africa, whether it's Christianity, or whether some of them are trying to use karma, they're using whatever they can to celebrate this man's death. And it's ridiculous, man. And black men have not done this. And this is why I say, this is the last thing I'll say on this part. I call this another black masculinist turn. This is a moment where black men are starting to get smacked in the face with the reality of gynocentrism. We're getting smacked in the face with just how deep this antipathy for black men runs. We were surprised when Ice Cube had this conversation with Cocktails with Queens, and black women disassociated themselves from the black community to argue for a position solely for themselves. We're finding the same kind of shock from black men as to how much rage is coming about from Kevin, and they're slowly starting to realize it ain't just about Kevin. It ain't just about Kevin. It's actually about them, black men themselves. The rage and antipathy is not limited to Kevin. It's actually directed at us. Kevin is just the excuse they're using today to do it.
And it's out in the open. I mean, like I say, we keep using these analogies, at least I do, in terms of racism. It's like, Jim Crow. I mean, you knew what you were dealing with. I'm in the southern states. You know what I mean? And I've been living in the South most of my adult life. And the white people I deal with, I know who they are. When I lived in South Carolina and I went downtown to Columbia, and I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, I went to the State House. There was an American flag, and right under the American flag, there was a Confederate flag. Okay? And I knew what the devil I was dealing with when I lived in South Carolina. And so, I'm kind of glad. I'm glad that they are putting their cards out there. I'm glad that they are not hiding their misandry. and then it is out in the open for the entire world to see, because now you can't deny it. You just can't. No one in their right mind can deny this level of hatred towards black men being expressed by this population of people, black women in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So look, fuckboy Twitter on their way to Kevin Samuels' funeral. Well, I'm not, I guess it's a video of some well-dressed black men or whatever the case may be, and they're all fuckboys. Kevin Samuels trying to figure out who let women in their 30s with 4 kids in his funeral. That's funny. That's funny to me. That's a funny one. I ain't gonna lie. That's funny right there, man. That's a funny one, man. I can't even deny that shit, man.
It is funny.
That's funny, man. That's crazy, man. But then you had people who had alternative viewpoints, man. All Kevin Samuels did was tell women the truth and tell guys to get their shit together, but people act like he an evil villain in a movie.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
I like that one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kevin Samuels told women to be in decent shape, not to have babies with men they wouldn't marry, and to be reasonable when dealing with men. And y'all wish death on the man? Laughing my ass off.
Yeah, that's where we are.
That's it.
The way you women are treating the news of Kevin Samuels as a celebratory event is revolting. Y'all are evil, twisted, deranged, selfish, careless, conceited, and distasteful, to say the very least. And it's ironic because y'all literally proven he was right about y'all. And that's a woman. That's a sister right there. Amara. And look, I ain't going to even go into it. George Zimmerman on tour signing autographs, and Kevin Samuels is the one y'all want dead.
Real talk. Real talk. Mm-hmm.
Kevin Samuels is the same person who shamed a woman on live for saying she will believe her child if a man ever touched him instead of the man. He had a dangerous mindset that went beyond just gender roles, so excuse me if I'm upset and boo-hooing over his alleged death. That's, okay. Kevin Samuels made a career off of bashing women and upholding oppressive gender standards, and y'all want us to take the high road when we find out he passed away. So, that's it, man. Look, I think that, do we say some things that can be considered kind of crass in the manosphere? Absolutely. Some of it's deserved, though. Look, you can't just get a pass, man. You can't just say negative shit to people, man, for years and years and years and years with no pushback. You can't just articulate thoughts and ideas over and over and over again and not expect any pushback, man. But that's the way they doing it now, man. It's like, okay, we're going to say what we want to say. We're going to talk about you evil black man, and you're going to sit there and take it because we said it.
Mm-hmm.
My bad. I ain't mean to make that happen, man, for some reason.
There we go.
That is not what I wanted to happen. I apologize for that.
Dr. Thunder.
But anyway,
Dr. Thunder.
What's up, Dr. Thunder?
What's up, Dr. Thunder, man? How you doing, brother? But anyway, man, look, y'all been here for quite a bit of time, man, and I appreciate each one of y'all taking your time out to come speak on my channel about Kevin Samuels, his death, and what people perceive, his death as either a blessing or a curse or a horrible act, of God or, just a natural occurrence. But one of the things I want people to keep in mind is that one of the leading causes of death for black men and black women is heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
You got the statistics, Doc. I'm talking about Doc Johnson on this one. It might be, it's the number one cause of our deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny though, because we'll sit here and celebrate the death of a black man for one of the leading causes of death in the black community, man. We are fucked up, man. We're FUBAR, man. Now, you might not even like what the man said, man, but look, I don't wish death on some of my enemies, man. Because they might get a chance to get shit right in life, man. So, like the whole idea of celebrating death in any form to me, unless it's a real enemy. Black people, man, have gotten to the point, man, this gender shit has become so fucking ridiculous, man, to where, like, people from the same race, man, are wishing death on each other now, man. And you can't even die fast, and that nigger can't even die right.
But here's
that's where we can't.
But let me just say this real quick. As far as heart disease, this was not only is this the number one killer of Black men and Black women, but up until a few years ago, Black women died from it more. And I'd say about 5 years ago, Black men pushed past Black women in terms of heart disease. So we're a smaller population. We die younger, and now we die to heart disease to a greater degree. And that's what we're dealing with. So I urge brothers to get checked on a regular basis. One of the things we know is that Kevin was experiencing, chest pains. If that's something you experience, I highly recommend you go to the hospital, go to emergency, you get checked out. You know what I mean? Don't take any of this lightly.
Yeah, man, get yourself checked out, man. We don't want you to pass before you have to. Black men have an aversion for going to the doctor, and there are good reasons why.
Very good.
Find a competent healthcare physician. If you another reason we don't go is sometimes we don't even have the insurance.
Yep.
And we don't maintain our bodies, man, as well as we do our cars, man. We at least put air in our tires. We won't fucking go see the doctor for nothing, man. And so life for us is stressful. We don't take care of our health, man. And Doc Johnson was pointing that out to me the other day, man. So I ain't, I'm not gonna go into all details, but we don't even take care of like what's going on with our mental health sometimes, man.
And I would add that too many of us have a fatalistic attitude. That whatever's going to happen is going to happen, or whatever, that sort of thing. And we don't have any control. And this is how my daddy went out. This is how my uncles went out, or whatever, that sort of thing. And we just surrender to all the stuff that we are subject to. But it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I'm saying? It does not have to be a thing where we just surrender to fate, man. You know what I mean? That every Black man has to, go out this kind of way, and diabetes, hypertension, and what have you. And trust me, I get it, man. Our lives are very stressful, man. Our lives are very, very stressful, and we deal so much economically, and I know everybody isn't always in the position to eat the way they should eat or whatever. I understand substance abuse and why people drink, why they smoke and fuck and all that kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? But we gotta do what we can do, man, to stay alive for as long as we can.
That's right.
Yeah, we gotta look after ourselves. That's Black men and women, man. We all gotta take care of our health. So Patricia Cotty, take your ass to the doctor. Go. But women have a routine more often than men do, because like women oftentimes go to see their OBGYNs and things of that nature. But Black men, they a lot of them don't go until there's something drastically wrong with them. So they say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So just go to the doctor, man, if you need to, man. Have have some self-care, man, for yourself, man.
Absolutely.
Dr. Thunder says, I'm interviewing Rolo Tomasi on Monday. Going to solicit questions from each of you for the convo. We'll definitely be talking about Kevin Samuels. Okay, that's cool, bro.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good luck with that, man. Good luck with that one.
There you go.
Good luck with that. Well, look, I've exhausted, man. We could talk on and on and on and on about the shit Black men go through. We could talk about Kevin Samuels and his meteoric rise to the top of social media. But ultimately, man, you know, we just feel that like there needs to be more, you know, people speaking out as candidly and as openly about whatever it is that they feel and what they think, as Kevin Samuels did, man. We need to have more black men talking, speaking up, even if, you know, it takes people aback. And, you know, nobody else has a problem talking about us. So, you know, hey, man, black women got to get this work sometimes too, man. You understand? Like, I mean, you know, it can't just be us getting to work all the time.
Yeah.
They got to get this work too.
Especially in the
That's
name
what
of,
Kevin Samuels was about. Yeah, that's Kevin Samuels about. You're going to get this work.
but it's in the name of truth. That's the
That's
core
it.
of it. It's
That's
in the
it.
name of truth. It ain't about attacking women just because we woke up one day and decided they treat this like we what's that little black and white television show used to, the Little Rascals? Like we just woke up and created the He-Man Women Haters Club or something.
Yeah.
That's not what this is. We're
Yeah.
talking about verified, documented issues that have gone ignored in regard to boys and men.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say it is apropos, if you think about it, that Kevin Samuels existed, right? Because there is no white version of Kevin Samuels, right? Right now. You haven't seen a white male in the manosphere or, you know, from that men's rights sector, where anywhere in public engage in the type of activities and conversations that he did. And largely that's because you know, they're hit by the gender stuff, right? But they're not,
Right.
and they're not in any way as devastated by the gender stuff as we are.
Mm.
Okay. So it is only fitting that a black man emerged to doggone lead the doggone charge in addressing all of the misandry and gynocentrism that exists in the Western world, because we are the ones who feel the brunt of it.
And
So
that's,
what does
you know,
that mean?
I say we the canaries in the coal mine, man.
So black
If
men
they
have to speak.
if they got a cold, we got the flu. No, we got COVID. Shit, if they got the sniffles, we got COVID. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, think about it. Like, think about the difference between, like, okay, so now you got Johnny Depp in court with, you know, Amber Heard about his reputation. Like, the average black man don't have like counsel like that, man, you know, or resources to defend his reputation, man. Every man ain't got cameras off. But what you need to start doing that shit though. It's unfortunate that in the intimacy of your own home, you need to start recording shit.
Real talk. Yeah.
Because nobody, look, the only thing I think, you know, that I want to articulate, man, before I leave the show today, man, is that men ain't perfect, but women ain't perfect either. Cut out the motherfucking fainting couch routine. Stop all the motherfucking fainting couch bullshit, and let's have a truthful, open, honest, candid conversation about all of our shortcomings, all of our expectations, desires, and delusions. If we did that, we could actually get somewhere. You know, I ain't gonna hold my breath though.
You better not. You better not.
No, I definitely ain't gonna hold my breath. But I'm gonna leave the last statements up to y'all, and then I'm just gonna sign out, man. So
I'm gonna check out, man. Listen, man, I appreciate you know, the time that we've spent, and rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. You know, he was a part of this enterprise that we're, you know, invested in right now. You know what I mean? He was one of us, and all of us that we know connected to him in one way, you know, or another. And I think that we just have to continue to be forthright and to be direct. You know what I mean? You don't have to be that way in the exact fashion that Kevin was. But I think it's just time that black men just deal directly with the gynocracy, you know, and be unapologetic, take the risk being an asshole, you know, and don't worry about being liked. That's the other thing, you know. Don't worry about being liked and being popular, because I mean there's too much at stake, man. And this stuff is killing us, bro. I ain't lying. This ideology, this toxic Western gender ideology is literally killing us, and we can't afford to sit on the sidelines. So thank you guys. I look forward to next time that we chop it up together. Y'all have a good night.
Anytime, man. I'm definitely down to get on any of y'all formats, man. Just holler at me.
Yes,
but thank
sir.
you for coming out, Doc.
All right.
Appreciate it, Doc.
Peace out.
Peace out, man.
Peace.
I just want to say thank you for the invitation. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. Rest in peace, good brother. If y'all are not subscribed to the Green Gorilla channel, I don't know what the hell you waiting on. Make sure you subscribe, support the brother, because he's bringing that fire on a regular basis. So I want to shout you out, GG. Appreciate you inviting me, fam.
Appreciate you coming, man. Subscribe to each one of those brothers' channels, man. Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's channel. I know most of y'all are already subscribed if you're watching this, but for those who are watching now and who haven't, go check out Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's channel, and also go check out Dr. Ron O'Neill's channel. Black men don't need permission to speak. They shouldn't have to have permission to speak, and they shouldn't be ashamed when they do speak. So having said all that, man, thank you, man, for coming by, man, and giving us some wisdom, dropping some pearls over a swine. And and y'all all be good. All the brothers watching, man, all the sisters watching, man, y'all be peaceful, man. Pass a good evening. Stay in good health. Until the next time, man, I'll holler at y'all. Peace.